Here we have a rock with its top cleanly sliced off, columns crafted with inhuman precision. The city is surrounded by a stunning system of drainage canals. Just look at the size of these massive claws. 10 structures built by an ancient advanced civilization. Kapalakaya Tomb, Turkey. 27 kilometers north of the city of Çorum, carved directly into the rock, stands a structure that resembles either the Grinch's house or a giant dolmen. Kapalakaya, or the rock with a door, is perhaps the most mysterious ancient structure in present-day Turkey. In fact, it has a cubical shape and can be walked around on all sides. Its height reaches approximately 13 meters. At first glance, due to its size and the way it was carved, it reminded me of the megaliths of the Yangshan quarry in China, which we'll discuss a bit later. At a height of about 4.5 meters, there's a square opening measuring 1 by 1 meter. Here's what you can see inside when flying a drone up to it. The top part of the hole appears to have been chipped away or widened, clearly during an attempt to extract something of interest that wouldn't fit through the original opening. Above the entrance is a Greek inscription reading Ikesios. Researchers believe this may be the name of a local ruler whose body was once entombed here, but this remains unproven. The word might carry an entirely different meaning. In fact, it was likely labeled a tomb simply out of tradition, since everything ancient and unexplained tends to be called a tomb. From this angle, you can see that part of the rock was cleanly sliced off, as if someone attempted to dig a tunnel into the mountain. And this supposedly happened 2,000 years ago. It's also curious that the structure was never fully separated from the rock face, which adds yet another similarity to the Yangshan quarry. But for now, these are just thoughts aloud. A group of similar structures can be found in the city of Amasya, about 70 kilometers east of Çorum. These constructions are commonly referred to as the tombs of the rulers of the Kingdom of Pontus, which existed from 281 to 64 BCE. Quarrying activity was often carried out on the slopes of nearby mountains, and in some places it continues to this day. Longyu Caves, China. The Longyu Caves were discovered in China only in 1992. They had remained unnoticed for centuries because from ground level they look quite ordinary. All of them are submerged in water. A local farmer caught a large fish in one of the ponds and decided to pump the water out, hoping to find more fish or perhaps something unusual. That's how the Longyu Caves were found. To date, 45 caves have been discovered and 36 of them have been drained. The caves are truly enormous, with ceiling heights reaching up to 30 meters. While they vary in size, all of them follow a very similar architectural design. The average area of the Longyu Caves ranges from 1,000 to 2,000 square meters, with an average height of 30 meters and a depth of 20 meters. Approximately 4 million tons of stone were extracted from the Longyu Caves. That's nearly 2/3 of the total volume of limestone blocks used in the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The interior stonework has no known equivalent in the world and resembles machine-cut grooves seen in modern salt mines. Inside, you'll find uniquely shaped columns, sloped stair-like walls, and precisely carved spaces. Most caves include rectangular submerged chambers at the bottom. Even in the drained caves, these lower chambers remain permanently filled with water. The wall carvings you see in some areas are modern additions, made recently to attract tourists. In reality, they could be considered acts of vandalism, as the original interiors show no signs of torch use, oil lamps, human habitation, or wear of any kind. There are many theories about the purpose of the Longyu Caves, but one stands out as the most plausible. According to this idea, the caves served as a combination of wells and cisterns for water storage. Located close to a river, their rectangular lower chambers appear to penetrate into the underground aquifer. That's likely why they remain filled with water even after being pumped dry. Today, many of the caves are still submerged, while the drained ones require regular pumping. For comparison, here's what medieval water cisterns in Istanbul, Paris, and Copenhagen look like. However, unlike those, the Longyu cisterns also function as wells, thanks to their depth and design. The sloped floors allow sediment to collect in one spot, making maintenance easier. Judging by their size and number, The ancient builders likely used these structures for industrial-scale purposes. Ironically, the mystery of the Long-U Caves' function may have always been right in front of us, as they still perform that function perfectly thousands of years later. Number 8. Japan. This country is often associated with robots and futuristic cities. However, there is evidence that long before its well-documented history, an equally advanced civilization existed here. Take, for example, the so-called Ishibutai Kofun tomb. It was built from massive stone blocks weighing up to 100 tons each. It's not just the exterior that's impressive. Just look at these massive ceiling slabs. It remains unknown why the builders needed to create a tomb with such enormous blocks, or how they managed to do it. It seems as if the ancient inhabitants of Japan had access to gigantic construction cranes. From the side, this so-called tomb resembles a hangar. Not far from it, deep in a dense forest, lies the massive granite boulder known as Masuda Iwafune. It stands 5 meters tall and weighs 800 tons. Its appearance is simply astounding. Scientists and historians are still struggling to determine its purpose. The prevailing theories are not particularly convincing, ranging from a stone boat to a pedestal for a monument to a Japanese public figure. There are no documents regarding its construction. An analysis of the stone revealed significant traces of cobalt, a rare and highly durable metal that is now used in the production of high-end components for cars. But just look at this. Here's how a human looks in comparison to this huge stone. It was clearly meant to be moved somewhere, and it is definitely unfinished. What do you think it was supposed to become in the end? Another baffling stone is Ishino Hoden, which weighs 600 tons. Yes, it is made not of granite, but of tuff, which is much easier to work with. But just look at it. It was created by removing rock from around the stone, a process that involved excavating over 100 tons of material. The remaining block was shaped into a cube with a notch on one side. There are no visible chisel or pickaxe marks, nor any clear signs of machine processing. People call it a soaring stone, because from certain angles it appears to be levitating. In reality, it is still attached to the rock with its bottom, but water constantly pools underneath it. For comparison, just look at this building next to it. That's a 2-story Shinto temple. Yes, they have taken over the area, hung bells, and prohibited any research. Maybe that's a good thing. At least no one is restoring it or engraving inscriptions about Japanese emperors supposedly responsible for its construction. Scientists have twice attempted to study it with ultrasound, but the results were inconclusive. Many say that Ishino Hoden resembles a power line support structure. Also in Japan is the so-called Devil's Chamber Pot, officially known as Oni no Sechin. It is a massive granite lid weighing around 30 tons, which some refer to as an altar for black magic. However, later on, I will explain what this stone was actually meant to become. Along the way, I'll also talk about the thousands of mysterious Kofun burial mounds scattered across the Japanese archipelago. But that's a topic for another video. Didymayon, Turkey. Now, let's journey deep into antiquity. In present-day Turkey, near the city of Miletus, lie the ruins of the ancient Greek sanctuary of Didymayon. The first references to it date back to the 8th century BCE, around the time when the Egyptian kingdom was entering its decline. This is the largest temple of the ancient world, surpassing all Greek temples by 2 to 2.5 times in size. There is nothing this massive even in Greece itself. I would call it the second Baalbek. Here we find half-meter high steps, 20-meter tall columns with 2-meter wide bases, and enormous 8-meter long megaliths used in the foundations. We also see polygonal blocks of complex shape which are simultaneously rounded and tapered, and stunning ceiling slabs with recessed niches, almost as if lamps or devices were once fitted into them. In terms of height, the temple was comparable to a 7-story building. This is what one of the fallen columns looks like, collapsed into segmented drums. At the very center of the temple lies a descent into an underground chamber, now blocked with stones, and other entrances are closed to tourists for unknown reasons. The foundation blocks extend at least 5 layers deep. There is little doubt that the most important part of the site was located underground. You can clearly see numerous signs of machine-like precision and evidence suggesting that the blocks were manufactured as if in a factory, following a template, and only final processing was done after placement. The area surrounding the structure is strewn with leftover stones, remnants of what the temple was once made of. And some of them look very curious. Very curious indeed. We also find many depictions of Medusa, the Gorgon, mysterious figures like these, as well as griffins. The decorative elements include a swastika motif identical to the one found in Baalbek. The entire Didymaean complex looks like Baalbek, only made of marble. I have no doubt that both temples were created by the same builders. But who exactly those ancient builders were and when they constructed these sites, that's a mystery we still need to solve. Just like in Baalbek, there are Greek inscriptions here, but whether the Greeks were truly the ones who built this, I have serious doubts. Either they simply occupied the site later and left their markings, or our entire understanding of the ancient Greeks is deeply flawed. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. Mexico. One of the earliest translations of the city of Teotihuacan is the place where the gods flew from. The ancient city of the gods is considered the center of Mayan culture, but there's evidence suggesting that its original builders predated the Maya, were a highly developed civilization. When the city was found, it was completely covered with soil. Pyramids have been restored more than once, so they are covered with ordinary small stones. But there is a place where tourists are not allowed, where the original stones are stacked, which were left unused during the restoration, and they are really a sight to behold. You can also find a staircase leading to nowhere. Many noticed that the arrangement of the 3 pyramids of Teotihuacan relative to each other is very similar to the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. This fact, and many others, suggest that these pyramids most likely have the same architects. Polygonal masonry here is very similar to the masonry in Egypt, and the Great Pyramid of Cholula exceeds even the famous Egyptian Pyramid of Cheops. Number 5. Easter Island. Easter Island is the second most distant island in the world, but surprisingly, the island even has its own authentic written language, Rongorongo. The concept of mana, the strength of the spirit, the inner energy, which is well known in popular culture, took its roots from here. Locals call this island Rapa Nui, and it's known for its platform with statues called Tangarete. According to one theory, these are statues of the dead leaders of the island. But few people know that there are roughly 890 such statues on the island. All the statues are made of a single piece of rock. Some stand alone, many face the ground. The platforms on which the statues are mounted imply that this was impossible to do with simple stone tools. They are made of large stones of very hard rock. There are signs of polygonal masonry. In the quarry where the hats for the statues were made, there were found ancient propellers made by some mechanical tools. There are very flat slices on the rocks, like rocks cut with machine tools, and also the fingerprints. It seems the rocks were melted and then somebody played with them like with clay. It turns out that there was a massive production of such statues. But what were all these statues for? Temples of southern India. India is home to many stunning ancient temples, but here we'll focus on just 2, Hoysaleshwara and Amruteshwara. What makes them so unique? Well, take a look for yourself. I don't even feel the need to convince you of anything. This is the Amruteshwara temple. It reminds me of my school workshop classes when I used to shape wooden candle holders on a lathe. But here, we're not talking about tiny wooden ornaments. These are 10-ton basalt columns, turned with such precision and speed that it's clear they weren't carved by elephants. Some might argue it's geopolymer concrete, and you're free to think that. But honestly, in this case, I won't even try to argue the opposite. It's all there, clearly visible. These columns are shaped and polished with inhuman precision. Just look at this. The polish is so fine that in some areas you can literally see your reflection. And here's something that might surprise you. Many mainstream scholars actually agree that these columns were likely made using a lathe-like technique. What no one can explain is where such advanced technology came from in ancient Indian civilization. Nearby stands the Hoysaleshwara temple, clearly built by the same hands. The basalt figures carved into its walls look as if they were cast from metal. The ornamental holes are so fine and curved that even a needle can't pass through, only something extremely thin and flexible like a straw or a fine wire. When you tap on some of these basalt pieces, they emit a metallic sound, which indicates that they were created using basalt of varying densities. That's only possible using stone casting techniques, something modern civilization only discovered in the early 20th century. According to the official version, all of these incredible bas-reliefs, which look more like something out of Alien than a religious site, were carved entirely by hand. Even if we assume they were cast, the complexity of the molds required would be even more incredible. Creating such precise patterns and structures is no easier with casting. It might be harder. There's even a video online where someone claims that one of the carvings shows a mechanism resembling a planetary gear system. But a quick Google search will show that this comparison is a bit of a stretch. For one, the gears are few and their teeth point inward, not outward like real gears. Still, I'll admit, the object does look mechanical. And here, in the hands of another deity, is a tool that strongly resembles a milling cutter. Of course, similar items are also interpreted as pine cones, which appear in many Indian temples. But here's the catch. Pine trees are quite rare in India. The four-armed deities in ancient Indian bas-reliefs often hold tools that look suspiciously modern. And let's not even start on their height and proportions. These temples provide clear evidence that a civilization once existed in India that was far more advanced than ours, by at least several centuries, if not more. Yanshan Quarry. Just 15 kilometers from Nanjing, the ancient capital of China, lies the Yanshan Quarry. It contains 3 nearly finished megaliths. The smallest one, known as the Head, weighs 6,000 tons. It features bosses that resemble those found on stones in Peru and Egypt. The medium-sized megalith, called the Body, weighs 9,000 tons and is considered the longest megalith in the world. If placed vertically, it would be taller than the Statue of Liberty. And finally, the largest megalith, known as the Base, weighs around 16,000 tons. It is 30 meters long, 16 meters high, and 13 meters thick. It is 10 times heavier than the heaviest block from the Baalbek quarry. According to the official version, Emperor Yongle, who ruled China in the 15th century, ordered the carving of a giant stele to honor his deceased father. These 3 megaliths were supposedly intended to be parts of that monument. We are also told that the builders simply overestimated their abilities and realized during the process that they wouldn't be able to move such massive stones. To me, attributing this construction to Emperor Yongle seems rather unconvincing. While there are some historical records supporting this version, a simple look at the quarry's layout and the sheer size of the blocks raises many arguments against it. Now I'd like to talk about those arguments in more detail. Let's take a look at the quarry walls. Why were they leveled so precisely? There's no practical reason to do that deliberately. First, it's a waste of time. Second, it increases the danger of working in the quarry, making further excavation nearly impossible. A worker falling from that height would almost certainly die, and even a fist-sized rock falling from above could be fatal. It simply defies common sense. Both ancient and modern quarries use a stepped cut method. It's practical and safe. It allows for block transportation, equipment installation, and protects against collapses. A more logical explanation, in my opinion, is that the quarry walls were leveled as a result of cutting out other similarly massive blocks. Just take a look at these areas. You can roughly estimate that from the lower section of the quarry alone, they could have extracted 12 more blocks the size of the largest megalith, the Base. And from the entire quarry, possibly up to 30 such blocks could have been removed. In short, a huge rock formation was simply cut into segments and taken away. Unfortunately, we don't know where exactly these blocks were transported or how they were used. Perhaps those discoveries still lie ahead. What's puzzling, however, are the visible traces of hand tools, pickaxes of ordinary size. There are no suspicious marks of advanced machinery like we see at other ancient sites around the world. And here's the paradox. On one hand, we have clear signs of manual labor. On the other, we're dealing with blocks of cosmic proportions and an overall scale of work completely incompatible with human capabilities. not to mention the unique and illogical approach to quarrying. Let's be honest, you're not moving these stones with elephants and logs. Two versions come to mind. The first one, a combination of manual labor with some form of advanced technology. Or, the hand tool marks were added relatively recently, perhaps to fit the site into a historical framework and make it raise fewer questions. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, sure. But doing something like that 50 years ago would have been very easy. We also have a perfect example with the modern murals in the Longyu caves in China. I wouldn't be surprised if the pickaxe marks in the caves were also added just 10 years ago. It's interesting to consider why the top surfaces of these blocks were leveled so precisely. I have a theory. Once a block was fully detached from the rock on all sides, it may have been designed to land on these rectangular supports. That way, it wouldn't rest flat on the ground and wouldn't need to be lifted during transport. For example, ropes could be passed underneath through these gaps, allowing the block to be easily moved, possibly even by some kind of flying transport device. Let me know your version of what might have happened at the Yanshan quarry in the comments, but please let's skip the geopolymer concrete theories. And now, taking off my tinfoil hat, let's move on. By the way, I recently came across another curious site in China, but we'll come back to that in another video. For now, let's look at site number 2. Angkor City, Cambodia. It is often called the 8th wonder of the world. To this day, it remains the largest religious structure on planet Earth. The total area spans around 3,000 square kilometers. That's equivalent to 3 Vaticans. This complex was built with incredible geometric and astronomical precision, using construction techniques that only became known to our modern civilization in the 19th century. One of the most impressive features is the advanced drainage system that surrounds the entire city. Even without counting the stone used for the canals, the amount of material used for the temple complex itself is estimated at around 10 million tons. And the nearest quarry is located 80 kilometers away from Angkor. Angkor is a massive territory filled with temples, over 70 of them. The main and most well-known structures are Bayon, Angkor Wat, and Bapuon. Most photos on the internet fail to capture the true scale of these structures. It's only when compared to a human that their colossal size becomes truly apparent. The central tower of Angkor Wat rises 65 meters high, the height of a 20-story building. On the day of the spring equinox, the sun rises in perfect alignment with this tower if you stand facing the entrance. That's exactly what crowds of tourists come here to do on that day. Bayon, also known as the Temple of 1,000 Faces, features 54 towers, each carved with 4 enormous faces, a total of 216. They likely represent the god Vishnu, though this remains uncertain. The temples are covered in incredibly detailed bas reliefs, carved everywhere, even in places where it seemingly wasn't necessary. As if, for the ancient builders, creating such intricate decorations was as simple as wallpapering. This wall stretches 350 meters in length and stands 3 meters high, and it's entirely covered in stone carvings. Among them is an image of a Gomphother, a prehistoric elephant with 4 tusks that, according to mainstream science, went extinct millions of years ago. Elsewhere, there's a depiction of Surya, the embodiment of the sun, along with 9 figures symbolizing the 9 planets of the solar system. 2 of those planets, Neptune and Pluto, I should remind you, were only discovered by our civilization in 1846 and 1930. But beyond the bas-reliefs, Angkor holds even more astonishing features. There are mysterious stone-louvered panels whose purpose remains unknown, yet they clearly appear to have been crafted on a lathe, and not just once, but seemingly in mass production. There are also columns of exceptional quality that were clearly not shaped using primitive hand tools. Nearby lies a perfectly cut block left unused, and many so-called lingams scattered across the site, which very likely served a technological purpose. It's entirely possible that this temple wasn't a temple at all, but something else entirely. Not that I'm suggesting anything? Okay, fine, maybe I am. In any case, Angkor absolutely deserves to be number 2 in our top of ancient structures built by a lost advanced civilization. In one of my upcoming videos, I will explore Angkor in more detail, dig into its hidden history, and try to uncover some of its secrets. Sigiriya Fortress, Sri Lanka. What if I told you that in Sri Lanka there's a 170-meter tall granite rock carved from top to bottom with unexplainable tool marks, showing evidence of stone melting and featuring 3-meter tall granite monuments shaped like dinosaur claws. The only thing missing to complete the mystery would be a pyramid. Oh wait, there's one here too, although partially ruined. Now let's take it step by step. Officially, the fortress is dated to the 4th century AD, and its construction is attributed to King Kashyapa. But even to the untrained eye, it's obvious that 2 separate civilizations worked here, likely separated by thousands of years. At the top of the rock, we find astonishing examples of unknown stoneworking technologies that resemble stone casting. There's a section of the rock where the top appears to have been sliced off, a 6 by 6 meter parallelogram carved out, and what looks like a stone sofa or platform, which might have served as a base for some artillery device or advanced equipment. In most cases, these features are part of the original rock itself, not assembled from separate blocks. In this photo, you can clearly see how an older, unexplainable structure is surrounded by massive amounts of brickwork, likely added much later. Of course, one of the most striking features is the series of pools carved directly into the solid rock. The largest measures 27 by 20 meters and is 2 meters deep. Just this one pool alone would have required the removal of over 3,000 tons of granite. At the top of the rock sits a massive granite boulder, estimated to weigh around 2,000 tons, positioned on what appear to be stone supports. It's clear that this is part of the original rock, possibly a fragment that broke off naturally. Local guides claim it was propped up for defensive purposes, meant to be pushed over the edge in case of an enemy attack. Sounds plausible, but the real question is, how did they lift a block that massive to such a height? However, the most fascinating part is found midway up the rock. Just look at the size and intricate detail of these giant granite paws. These are the so-called Lion's Gate. It's said that there was once a full lion's head, and the path to the citadel led through its open mouth. But at some point, the head broke off and mysteriously disappeared. Now let's take a closer look at the so-called lion's paws. Something just doesn't add up. A lion has 5 toes, all roughly the same size. Like humans, the thumb is on the inside. But these paws, they have 4 toes, 3 large ones, and a small, almost vestigial one on the outer side. The funny thing is, the current name, Sigiriya, literally means lion rock. This is a perfect example of people not bothering to study the facts. Someone probably saw a large animal-shaped monument and, drawing a lazy parallel with the Sphinx in Egypt, thought, must be a lion, and so, to this day, they're called Lion's Gate, and the place is known as Lion Rock. But whose paws are these, really? Local reptiles, like monitor lizards, crocodiles, and chameleons, also have 5 toes, so that doesn't match either. Strangely enough, the shape more closely resembles the talons of birds of prey, such as owls or raptors. Another interesting comparison is with mythological griffins, whose claws are often depicted in various ways. But perhaps the closest match is to the foot of a large ancient reptile, like a Tyrannosaurus rex. Although even here, the small toe is on the opposite side. Things just keep getting more intriguing. It's also important to consider local mythology. The infamous Ravana, a demon king from Hindu legend, is said to have ruled ancient Sri Lanka. Perhaps the builders were trying to depict Ravana in the form of a mythological beast thousands of years ago. Or maybe they were simply carving the most terrifying predator known to them at the time. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose paws do you think these really are? The plateau is literally covered with all kinds of markings, from rectangular tracks resembling bulldozer treads to mysterious lines etched using unknown methods in some of the most inaccessible places. One of the biggest mysteries is how the stairways originally looked, and how and why such an enormous amount of brickwork was transported up to a height of 200 meters. It's estimated that 3 million bricks and 3,000 marble steps were brought here, though no one knows exactly from where. Today, you can reach the summit via a modern metal staircase, but how people ascended it in ancient times remains unknown. I believe that Sigiriya Fortress is one of the clearest examples of a structure showing the layered efforts of 2 completely different eras. The earlier builders, far more ancient, carved megaliths sliced into solid rock and possibly even used stone casting technology. Who knows, maybe they even coexisted with dinosaurs. Then, around the 5th century AD, during the reign of King Kashyapa, another group of builders brought up massive quantities of brick and constructed what appears to be a pyramid at the summit. One thing is certain, the final composition is truly fascinating, though I would have loved to see what the original, earliest version of this place looked like. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment. It really helps the channel grow. Take care and see you in the next video about the ancient builders.